Hello, this is Sarah Tuberty, your host from Disarming Disability. Enjoy the following program on Public House Media.
How's it going, everybody?
Hey guys,
This is Keith.
and Katie from Coffee with Keith and Katie on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
When you're done listening to this show, I hope you'll come check out our show, Coffee with Keith and Katie. A new episode comes out every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. I'm Emily, and I'm here with Elisabeth today and our special guest, Shannon McCarty, and we're here to talk nerdy to you. Shannon has been in reality casting for the past 17 years and would like to share a little bit about herself, and then we'll talk to her about some questions we might have for her.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love being nerdy, and I love talking about reality TV.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me. So I'm excited to chat with you about, I guess, whatever you want.
Awesome. Sounds good. So you are currently working on Nailed It, which is the Netflix show. And I know Lindsay, our other co-host, loves that show, among a lot of those other the reality cooking shows and stuff like that. And I watched a few episodes and I'm like, this is hilarious. Just fantastic.
It's been really fun to cast Nailed It. It's a baking show on Netflix, but instead of, I would say, a lot of competition shows out there, it's actually people who are not good. So people go on and, they have different challenges, and whoever wins does win $10,000, which is fantastic, but it's sort of like you're the best of the worst there. So you kind of have to have a sense of humor about it, and you probably just want to hang out with Nicole Byer, which I get it because she's hysterical.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, the best of the worst is a really good way to describe that. Like, I think you got it there. So that's fantastic. So could you share a little bit about some of your background in the casting world?
Absolutely. So I studied television in college. I went to Syracuse, although unscripted casting was really not a thing when I graduated in 2002. And it just so happens that the first job that I got when I moved back home to LA, where I'm originally from, happened to be in unscripted casting. And it was so fun. My first major was actually psychology. So I feel like I sort of merged my two worlds. And then I worked on this show called For Love or Money, which is very classy. I had to choose between love or $1 million. It was pre-Bachelor. And then I worked in The Apprentice, which, depending on how you feel, you're welcome or I'm sorry. I don't know.
I think I watched it a little bit when I was younger. I think my parents kind of thought it was interesting. So
I think, I cast the sort of everyday people before it became celebrities. And for me, it was fascinating.
Sure.
Because it was just a lot of really talented business people. So I never took a business class in college. I took television classes. So it was interesting to get to know all of the really interesting business people. I would have no idea that after some of the casting calls, we would go up to Trump's office that he would be our current president. So that's
right.
Yeah,
that is like hindsight. Oh wow, I could have. Wow, interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And then I worked on Supernanny and Biggest Loser. And then I started to work on The Real World, 7 strangers living in a house. And that was really fun. I actually just recently finished another season of that. I had taken some time off to do some documentary work. And then after Real World 33 ended, I just popped on to Nailed It, which has been super fun because it's got such a sense of humor. I mean, I feel like most people don't like doing things, like continuing to do things that they're not good at, but there's something about baking and cooking where you just keep trying, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but you're totally right though. People I have a friend who was just terrified of cooking when she first got married, and now she's been trying it, and she was not super great at first, but she's been trying it and getting better at it and stuff. So I think it's kind of the necessity to eat, maybe.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of that.
Well, I mean, also sometimes even if you fail, it's not always nasty tasting. Like it will still taste good. So it's
It
kind
might
of
be
instructive
ugly.
to say, oh, maybe I could do this a little bit better. You know, I'm
No, exactly.
I'm not like a traditional cook that will follow recipes because my ADHD kind of inhibits me from doing that so well. I'm more of a let me just throw all of this together and make sure it looks and smells and tastes good, and it usually turns out fine. So
Sure.
that's what I do. Like I watch cooking shows and I watch like, you know, like on YouTube or, you know, what have you. So, and I watch for like techniques and ideas, but like I go off and I make my own things. And even if I don't necessarily get to where I'm wanting to go, it usually still ends up pretty yummy anyway.
That's
And
true.
the journey is what it's really all about too. Like if you're having a
Yeah.
good time, then you know, who
Yeah.
cares? I guess that's why Nailed It is kind of funny because you can have it taste really good, but it can look potentially, you know, very
Off.
unappetizing.
Yeah.
Like a German cake is never going to look good. It's always going to look a
Oh,
little
I know. It
lumpy and
always
weird,
looks gross.
but it tastes great. So, I mean, unless we get a lot of people who write in and they like mistake salt for sugar, in which case that will not be good.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh
You're not going to want to eat
no.
that. And cake pops, for some reason, people try cake pops often, and it really never turns out well.
Yeah, I don't know. My my mom and sisters and I made cake pops for our wedding cake. We had like a tiny cake and then everyone else got cake pops. They all turned out fine for us. I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what's so hard about this, people. But apparently it's a struggle for everyone. I don't know.
Or you're just really good. I would say that's
I
a
don't know.
win for you.
I'll take it. It was fun making them too. I kudos to my mom because she did a lot of work on those. So
It does take a lot of time. You know, and this has been fun. This is my first cooking show that I've ever worked on. I actually grew up in a culinary family. My uncle is sort of a well-known restaurateur in sort of the farm to table movement of the early
oh
70s and
cool.
80s. So I've
That's
always
awesome.
wanted to work on a show, and this particular production company also does Top Chef.
Oh,
Which is
cool.
very exciting. But yeah, no, I think Nailed It is a hit. And also because you can watch it with your kids, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, we have a lot of kids who are like, I'm 7. Can I be can I try out for Nailed It?
That's so cute. I love it. Okay, so we've got to know then, because you've been talking about the people that you do get, like audition videos and stuff from. Is there, what do you look for in somebody to put on the show?
Well, you can't be that good. I mean,
Okay.
if you've worked at a restaurant professionally or you're also trying out for Top Chef, you probably wouldn't be good for Nailed It because you just be a ringer basically. So
Yeah.
you do need to like be someone who enjoys doing it and has a passion for it, but understands that you are not the most talented person in the room, but you can kind of giggle at yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think sense of humor and passion is important. But then also just really, you know, being able to recognize that it's okay that you're not the best.
Yeah. That's what makes it fun though.
Yes, I agree. I think so too. And I think, I mean, I feel like Nicole could have a good conversation with anybody, but I feel like, you know, with any sort of thing that's on television, you want good personalities, you know,
Yeah.
being able to express what's going on. And I think for any competition, there is a level of stress that goes along to it, especially because there's timed challenges. So
Yeah.
being able to sort of vocalize, oh, if, you know, the clock is running down, oh, I'm freaking out a little bit, you know, instead of just sort of keeping it in. That's not fun to watch.
Gotcha. Gotcha. It's more entertaining to watch someone who stresses out a little bit.
Yeah, or at least is able to talk about it. Like, this is a
Sure.
stressful situation.
Yeah.
We get a lot of also people who nominate their loved ones in their life. So
Aw.
we get a lot of emails and it's like, I'm nominating my sister-in-law. And then
Wonder how that
sometimes
conversation goes.
well, I wonder
Yeah.
about that too. I wonder about that too. Like, are you happy about it? But actually, I feel like if you're a fan of the show, you probably already have a sense of humor if you like the show. So you're going to be like, no, I get it. I had that big disaster on Thanksgiving and I earned this nomination.
Yeah. Like I tried that one Pinterest idea and just totally bombed, and that's why.
And it's so hard. I mean, there's so many Pinterest wins that, you know, you have to be able to accept your Pinterest fail if that's the case.
Right. Yeah. Um, All right, so you've been in the casting industry for 17 years. What has been one of your like most interesting casting experiences in anything that you've done?
I worked on a tattoo competition show called Best Ink. And prior to that, I grew up, surrounded by art and understanding art and loving art. But prior to me working on the show, I wouldn't say that I necessarily saw tattoo as, an art form necessarily.
Okay.
And then with the beauty of my job is I sort of get to learn whatever that topic is, I try to become an expert about it. And so I actually really loved working on the tattoo competition show, and I saw such incredible art, and I met really phenomenally talented artists who had the ability to turn art into a full-time career. They were, out of probably every show that I've cast, which is, I don't know, probably like 80 shows at this point, I would say that group of people has been the most charming and welcoming and delightful and creative people that I've ever met. And that was a big surprise to me. I took the show just because I was really interested in it and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. And I just embraced the culture. And now I'm that, weirdo who, if I see somebody's tattoo at a party or at a coffee shop or whatever, I'm like, oh, who's your artist? And
That's really cool though.
Yeah. And I actually don't have a tattoo. And so I feel like I'm still looking for my perfect artist, but it's really given me a sense of the art that's possible with it. But I also laugh at terrible tattoos because there's a lot of really bad ones.
I mean, there are though. I saw one just scrolling through Pinterest the other day. Somebody's knuckles that said PLAN and then HE or AHEA, and then the D was left off because they didn't plan ahead. Like, okay.
No.
Yeah. Like, oh no, you didn't.
Awesome. I remember like binge watching that show back in the day, and that was really awesome because I mean, anybody who follows me on my Instagram page knows that I'm into body modification. I have piercings, I do have tattoos, and everything like that. So that was like pretty much a show that was like right at my alley, and so that's really awesome. Like I never really thought about the fact that once you start working on casting these shows that you actually have to like learn a little bit about what this show is going to be about in order to really get into the meat of casting it.
And that's the most fun part of it for me. So yeah, when I worked on The Apprentice, I had to understand business. When I worked on Supernanny, you sort of have to learn, parenting techniques without sort of, allowing that to bleed into when you're in somebody's home, but just sort of understand, because you have to profile people in order to pitch them to the network. And so basically with every show that I have to do with Real World, I'm constantly learning about new things, people leaving certain religions or growing up in, different areas of the country. I've been to all 50 states. And when you actually meet people where they live, you really get an idea for who they are. So it's the perfect job for me because I'm a constant learner. Every sort of, personality test that I take is always like, you love learning. So I just keep doing that. Yeah. And then when I left casting for a little bit, I started doing a documentary series about intelligence missions with the CIA and the NSA and FBI.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a drastic change because I was working on an MTV dating show prior to that. So I went from an MTV dating show to a CNN documentary series.
That would be very different.
but it was amazing. And I think if you could talk to, somebody about who they just slept with the night before on an MTV dating show, then you can talk to the former head of the CIA. If you talk to people, you can talk to people. But learning all about that was really fun too. And, I now feel like I know a lot about the Cold War, which is weirdly applicable these days. So
interesting. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting stuff that nobody knows about from the Cold War. And like, oh my goodness, my husband is a huge history buff, and all that like naval history, aircraft history and war history and all that stuff is just, he loves it. So
you might really like the show. It's called Declassified. It's apolitical completely. It happens to be on CNN, but it has no politics involved.
Okay.
And every episode is sort of a mini documentary about the intelligence case or mission told by the men and women that worked it.
That's cool. I bet actually.
So I'm going to have to look that up now because I have been on a real documentary binge lately, and so we're going to have to like add this to the watch list.
I actually think my father-in-law would probably really love it because he like that's his thing, is factual documentary type Yeah, he loves it.
Oh, good. Yeah, take a
recommend it
look.
for him.
I would love it.
Thank you.
We have our third season coming out this fall on CNN, but there's other, you can get it on CNN Go, and they had it on Hulu for a while. But yeah, there's other ways to watch it, and
Okay.
if I didn't work on it, I would watch it. So I'm not just
Yeah,
tooting my own horn.
that's awesome. That's really cool.
But yeah, no, I like the idea that I can learn about, topics or things in history, or just really anything about people from the people themselves, because they're the best teachers. So
Oh yeah.
about, so I got to learn about the art of tattoo from the artist itself, which was pretty phenomenal. And they'll tell you pretty early, like, don't call it, a tattoo gun. It's a machine, and then you learn things that you can and cannot say. And still to this day, I follow my favorite artists on Instagram. And
Nice.
so I feel like I take little bits of whatever show I get to work on, to the next one. And that's always really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this one, I am actually a terrible baker myself. I ruin like Rice Krispie treats. So I feel like I could be on Nailed It, which is the beauty maybe of the show, because potentially
Sure.
anybody could be on it as long as they're not talented.
Yeah.
But there's so many shows that are so specific, which is great. Like if you want swamp people, there's a swamp people show. If you want somebody who's panning for gold, there's like a gold panning show. And whereas like this one, anybody can apply.
Such variety, and like you wouldn't even think to look for shows like that, but it's there's something for everyone.
There's absolutely something, which is perfect, because I mean, like similar to your podcast, if you want to get nerdy about something, like let's get nerdy, let's do it.
Yeah, today we're getting nerdy about casting reality shows, because it's just something we find interesting, and like the way you've described your like progression through your career, it sounds like you've gotten nerdy about every show that you've been working on.
I totally
as part of it. Like you just kind of have to be nerdy to do a job like that, it sounds like, which is awesome.
I totally agree, because for me, I only take shows that I want to get nerdy about, because I'm going to then spend all day either talking to the people about that particular topic or finding people. A lot of it is outreach, where we're really digging to find specific things and specific people. And so if you're going to spend, working in television is not a typical 9-to-5 job. You're working pretty long hours, but it's also super fun. So I don't mind putting in a 17-hour day if I have to, because I really like what I'm doing.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no. So there was a time where I basically said, like, okay, it's great that there's all types of shows, but for me personally, I don't want to take a show that I can't tell my grandma about. She's gonna judge me.
Right.
There's definitely things, if you dig back to my IMDb, where I'm like, oh, sorry, I worked on that one. But
yeah,
I worked on Bad Girls Club, which was really fun in the moment. But yeah, I got to a point where I was like, I am having a hard time connecting with these lovely ladies. We are on different paths in life, and so I will move on from that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a good thing to notice about it, is like, okay, you're if you're not connecting with the people you're casting with anymore, like, yeah, maybe it's time to move on. So interesting.
Yeah. And interviewing is really fun too. I mean, you guys do it. But there's a skill to it. It's, and depending on whatever show you're working on, or for you guys, whatever thing you want to get into, there are different techniques in doing it. But I think at the end of the day, it's just being open and willing to talk to people, so that they feel comfortable talking to you.
Yeah, I think that's right too. I mean, we get a little bit of that when we have guests on our show, because we usually have something that we want to like talk to them about, or like a reason that they're nerdy, and it's interesting to get the different people. We've had somebody who his hobby is Batman. He cosplays as the Michael Keaton Batman. Outside of his 9-to-5 job, or we actually got connected with somebody who works at Marvel, and so it's like, oh, that's super cool. We can like find connections to people, but also like that's not the only thing that they're about.
Right. Or it can be like, Batman,
Sure.
Obviously he's into it, and that's amazing. I think there's a lot of people who are just sort of going through their life and just trying to do the best that they can, but it's like climbing the work ladder, or just, keeping up with the family. It's hard to have something that you're really passionate about. So the idea that somebody can be Batman is kind of awesome, that we live in a world where he can legitimately be Batman whenever he wants, and people are excited about it.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I agree. And I think reality TV is something that people get really jazzed about too, which is awesome. I mean, it's certainly helpful for longevity in terms of my career, but I love talking to people about what their favorite reality shows are, because I think it sort of says something about them in the perfect way.
I totally can, because it's like, oh, you find out something, like they're interested in a certain reality show, but they wouldn't tell you, or you wouldn't be able to tell that by just looking at them.
Right. Like I would say I have a lot of guy friends who have gotten into The Bachelor and now
my
turned
goodness.
it into, sort of like fantasy football for The Bachelor. And that's not
Yes.
something that they ever would have anticipated getting excited about. Although nobody seems to like the current Bachelor, but people are still watching.
I've heard that too. Personally, I'm not into The Bachelor as a show. We started when the show Bachelor and Bachelorette first came out. We watched it a little bit. One of them was actually from where we were living at the time, so that was kind of cool. But it's so funny because we have our network founder Baxter and several other people, like some other guys that always have, like, they're on the sports shows on the network and that sort of stuff. They're all into The Bachelor.
Isn't it funny?
And they started talking one time in our group chat about something. They just said, like, this season, blah blah blah, I hope it changes next season. And I'm like, oh, they must be talking about football or something. No, it was The Bachelor. And I'm like, you guys, you need to like start a show about The Bachelor or something, because this is hilarious.
My favorite is Jason Biggs, who was in the American Pie movies. He gets really into it. He live tweets and I think does Instagram stories when he's watching it, and has sort of created like a cult following of his watching of The Bachelor.
That's fantastic.
So it's pretty funny.
That is. No, we were like, ooh, we should call the show Football or Bachelor. What is it? Or Sports or Bachelor. So like whenever we listen to the episode and you have to guess what they're talking about. They'll give zero context.
I agree. But I also understand that like reality TV might not be for everybody. Like for Batman Guy, for example, there's not a lot of Batman stuff in reality TV. So I feel like sometimes people are nervous to tell me that they don't watch reality TV or even TV in general, but I don't care. It's kind of like anything, like do you.
Yeah. Like I don't personally watch a ton of reality TV, but it's always entertaining when I do. Like I love watching Kids Baking Championship with my daughter, partly because I kind of want her to like have a passion for baking and cooking, because my husband and I both love it too. So it's like, oh, here, watch kids do stuff because you're a kid. But it's always so interesting to see like even on stuff, something like Shark Tank or like, you see a huge variety of people and ideas and the creativity that comes out of it.
I agree. I think Shark Tank is an amazing opportunity for not only the people who are on the show, but it's interesting just to see the creativity. But also that feels like sports too. Like sometimes you see some of the products come on and you're like, how did this get here?
Yeah, like, oh.
But then some of it is genius where it's like, why didn't I think of that?
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth, do you have any shows that you watch that you like?
Yeah, sorry, my son was just in the room, so he finally left.
All good.
Yeah, my husband and I, we don't watch like a whole lot of TV, just because, having a toddler running around, it's kind of hard. But we recently have started binging 60 Days In and Love After Lockup, and I have no idea how we even got onto those shows. Like, I honestly have no idea how we even started watching them. But we did, and now it's like every single week we're like, oh, we gotta watch the episode. Oh, we gotta watch the episode. and then after the episode airs, then we go on the subreddits and read about everybody else's reactions and information that somebody might have dug up and everything. And I don't know why. It's just like some fascination that's just kind of blossomed, and I don't even know where it came from.
Something to get nerdy about.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing, and you just get all excited about it, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
I agree. Like you've basically created your own community, and I'm always impressed with the things that people are able to put together. Like for example, in Love After Lockup, then you can find them on Instagram and see, are they still together, or and then you can sort of feel like you're producing their after show for yourself.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure. Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So Shannon, you sorry, Elizabeth, you were going to say something.
Oh yeah, I just had a quick question, because we've been talking about like all the different stuff that you learn when you're going to cast these shows. But we haven't really touched exactly how the casting process like works. I know you mentioned like receiving emails about that. Do you put out like casting calls on certain websites or put up notices? Like how do you gather all these people that you find exactly?
That's a great question, and it's different for actually every show. So, for my last show on The Real World, it's an iconic show. Actually, not everybody's heard of it specifically. If you're younger, some kids don't know about it at all.
Yeah, this one's on MTV though, right?
Yeah, so it was on MTV for 33 seasons. It started
Yeah.
in 1992. It was sort of the beginning of reality TV, although technically Cops was on 6 months earlier. But I would say that they're two different
Oh,
types of shows. Um, and then the last couple of seasons on MTV, they had some twists, which were really interesting to watch, but I wouldn't say had the cult following as the show had prior. So they took a couple years off, and then actually Facebook wanted to bring the show back. So the last season that I worked on is now going to be on Facebook. So it was interesting because we were reaching out to people who had never heard of the show, but their parents had. And that was really interesting. So a lot of it is Instagram outreach, but we did actually have physical casting calls. So I specifically went to Atlanta and Chicago. We put the word out. I talked to local radio stations, local newspapers, and we would tell people about the show. And then, thousands of people wait out in the cold and meet with myself and
oh
other
my
casting
goodness.
directors. But I always love that too, because then people actually get to talk to each other in line. So by the time they come meet the casting directors, we always meet them in teams. There's a bit of a camaraderie, and you would see what it would be like, for them in the house with other people, because most shows don't travel anymore. So a lot of the times, when we're interviewing people, it's over Skype. And so you don't get to see them with other people. So I really like doing casting calls, and that's what I grew up doing, going to college towns for Real World and for Apprentice and Biggest Loser and all that.
Yeah, I actually did. There was when we were living in Milwaukee, I went to college in Milwaukee. Um, American Idol came to Milwaukee for auditions, and I'm like, yes, they're here. I can audition. So I actually did stand in the line. It was in the summer, so it was really hot, and we were in the sun, and there were like thousands of people waiting outside the Bradley Center, the old Bradley Center that's now gone. We miss you. But I hear the new center is amazing. I just haven't been there yet because they built it right as we were moving out of town. So I've heard it's fantastic though. But yeah, so I did. It was like the initial day. I think there were like 2 different days that were 2 days apart or something. So you waited in line to get your like ticket to the actual audition just to make sure they had. I don't know exactly how it worked anymore. But you had to have your ticket that you got on the first day in order to get in to sing for somebody on the second day.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they would call up your number, and then you would go in like a group of 7 or 5 people and stand in front of this panel of people. I don't even know who the people were that we each stood in front of, but and I'm like, I have no idea what they're looking for, but I'm just gonna do my thing and hope they like me, and if not, oh well.
And I think that's a really good attitude to have, because at the end of the day, that's what casting directors are looking for. Because a lot of times people do come in and they're like, oh, well, I think this is my idea of who they want to see, so I'll be that. And then you're not really being yourself. I mean, I think it's trickier with a competition show like that, because maybe they're not looking for people with a country twang or people who have a belty musical voice, whatever it is. But I love it. Were you nervous? Were you scared to do that?
I was totally nervous. I might have been like 19 or 20. I was 20. And so like I had never done anything like that before, but I had sung before, like, I was in musicals in high school, and like I'd sing at church and things like that. So like I was familiar with singing in front of people, but not as an audition. And so it was super, super weird for me.
I'm sure, but that takes
Yeah.
guts. Good for you for going.
Thank you. Yeah. And well, I was super interested in what the process was like for something like that, because I mean, obviously they're looking for like a little bit of a variety of people, but I know that they kind of have a concept of the an end goal in mind for, like, I don't know if there's several different booths that had like 3 or 4 people listening to auditions, and so I don't know if each booth was listening for a different type of person, or if they all had certain qualities that they were all looking for, or what. But it was just so interesting the way they had it organized, and I wanted to keep going through the process, but I just didn't make it past that first set of panelists. So
Oh, they missed
I'll
out.
never know. I guess so.
They totally
They should have listened to my my what was it, Cinderella's godmother. It's not like recorded anywhere, but I wish it were, because I did a pretty good job for not having any voice lessons at that point. So, but it was fun.
And I think at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You go and it's fun, and it's true. Sometimes you never know what they're looking for. I've had
Yeah.
friends who have worked on musical shows where obviously you need to be talented, but you have to have this really heart-wrenching story that goes along with it too.
Right.
And when you're 19 years old, most of the time people don't have a lot of backstory to go with their life. They're just living their life, and so, yeah, whereas like sometimes depending on the show, all you really need is a lovely pure voice and you can go through. So it is true. And sometimes that's constantly changing from week to week when people are casting too. So it really just depends on the project. And yeah, unfortunately the people who are applying never really know what the casting directors are looking for.
Right.
But I
It's
think
probably better that way, though.
true. Yeah, but I think your
Yeah.
take was perfect. If you go into it with a pure heart, and you just be yourself, that's always what I'm looking for. I feel like in this day and age of sort of people living their lives on social media, it's kind of hard to actually know the true authentic people, where it's like, what life are you actually living that's different from the one that you're projecting online?
Yeah.
And that was interesting, interviewing people in their 20s, because in some cases they don't actually know. They're very aware of whatever brand they're putting out there on social media, but they're not
Sure.
necessarily fully aware of like who they are themselves. And actually, we've heard that sometimes the casting process can help that. For the Real World specifically, the casting application is 20 pages long.
Wow.
And so you learn a lot about yourself that way. And then the interviews that we do, we basically, for that particular show, there's no competition, there's no clock running down, there's no goal at the end. It's just really kind of learning about who they are. So
Interesting.
we've been told that it feels sort of like a therapy session without any advice.
Hey, if it helps.
Yeah. And then, for something like Nailed It, we're just looking for people who, love baking and kind of have a fun personality and want to do something that could be a good time, so we learn a little bit about their lives too, but it's not, I would say, as emotionally deep as some of the other interviews that I do. And honestly, all of it is fun. I just like talking to people.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you like talking to people, because we're having a great time talking to you right now. So
I just always try to not make it about myself.
that's awesome. Yeah. No, you're doing a great job. I've really enjoyed I mean, you're just so open to answer any questions that we have, and like, because we talked on one episode maybe about a month ago or so. We were like, you know what? I wonder what a casting director does, like, behind the scenes. And then we got connected with you, and we're like, we finally get the chance to ask our questions. So thank you so much for being so open and willing to have a talk with us. It's been really fun.
Oh, of course. No, I appreciate it. I feel like it is a little bit of a mystery what people are looking for. And like you said, depending on the project, sometimes you just don't know. But I almost wish it was a bit more transparent, because like I said, I think it was amazing, Emily, that you showed up to the casting call, because I think most people are just, they don't know what's going to happen. So they just don't do it.
Yep.
And it's like one of those things where it's like, you have to try to see, you have to actually go to see if it's going to work out. And
Right, exactly.
and hopefully it was still a good experience regardless what happens. But I think it shouldn't be this sort of like cloud of mystery. If you're interested, like for Nailed It, all you have to do is send in an email and then we'll send you the application.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard. You basically just have to answer a couple of questions and film yourself baking. And then
That
for the
sounds like
real,
fun.
yeah. So, I mean, specifically, if anybody wants to try out for Nailed It, you can go to the Magical Elves website. That's the production company, or you could just email us at naileditcasting@magicalelves.com. Or you can email me. My email is mccartycasting@gmail.com. McCartycasting ting@gmail.com. And, so I don't want to make it seem like, casting directors are some like mythical creatures. It's just, I'm just an everyday person that this just happens to be my job and I like doing it. But, I love talking to people about this, and I like talking about what they like to do. So yeah. I think it's just kind of, I feel like I sort of lucked into the dream job.
Yeah, that's super cool. We can put all of your information into our show description so that if anybody would like that information, you can go ahead and find it on wherever you're listening to the podcast, or you could even check out on our website, on the Public House Media's website, on our show page that'll have a new post for this episode. So if you just look for the post about this episode, you should be able to find all of Shannon's information she just shared with us. That way we can put it in a post for you guys, and it'll be super easy for you to find. So if anybody listening wants to get in touch with her, that would be a great way to do so.
Excellent. Yay. What I think I would love it if we got somebody from the podcast on the show. How cool would that be?
That'd be super fun.
That would be really awesome.
Yeah.
And they could make nerdy cakes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That'd be fantastic.
You have to do it.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the two of you, if you could make any sort of nerdy cake, what would you make?
Oh my goodness. Well, my husband already has made a nerdy cake. He made a globe-shaped cake in the shape of, what's the planet Yoda's from?
I guess I'm not nerdy enough to know.
I don't remember what.
At least about that. I'm not nerdy enough about Star Wars.
It's not
stuff
Tatooine. It's
cool.
not Naboo.
Dagobah?
What was? Yes. Say that again, Elizabeth.
Dagobah?
Yes. Dagobah. That's the one. So it was supposed to be like black, and it was kind of a frosting fail the way he had to do it, because we didn't have any black frosting dye. So he ended up taking like all this green and all this purple and just loading it into the white frosting, and we're oh goodness. We ended up dyeing our cutting board by accident in a couple places. So it was a little bit of a fail, but we tried, because I think we were just having that's right. We were having a Star Wars marathon party. We were going to watch all of them. And so he's like, I'm going to make a cake. And my husband is like the baker. He took a cake class when he was like 12 or something like that. So he took a decorating class. He sold pies when he was in high school. He like loves baking bread and everything. So like he's the baker. I love baking too, but he is like all about it. And I love cooking. Like that's kind of my passion sort of thing. So like, I don't know, if I could make a cake, a nerdy cake, I'd probably do
one with an angel banishing sigil from Supernatural on the
yeah, there you go.
That would look so cool.
I'm thinking I'd probably do something Harry Potter, just because it's stuck in my head right now. We watched the first Harry Potter movie just a little bit ago, so it's on my mind.
I've seen some Sorting Hat fails, and they basically look like a pile of you know what, but they're very fun to look at.
I'm sure they are fantastic. I have a good chuckle.
Episode of How to Cake It, where she made a snitch cake.
Ooh, that would be cool. Golden
with the wings and all of the that would be very cool to look at.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
well,
I just have to say though that the first episode of Nailed It, I watched that one first, and that baker, the wedding cake baker that was on there as the guest judge was just hilarious. I loved her with her big round glasses, and then she like went snooping around the pantry on the episode too, and I'm like, you little. It was just too funny.
They do a really good job. Yeah, this is actually my first time casting the show, but they've been casting the show for a while. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they're going to throw some new tricks in there. So, people who are maybe big fans, who knows, maybe the pans will be somewhere new, or the ingredients will be somewhere new. So it's not going to be always just the same. You gotta throw some tricks.
Sure.
Have some tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah, I think
it's too easy.
No,
right?
It should not be good. At the end of the day, if whatever you're showing to the judges looks good, then you're not the right person for the show.
That's just too bad. Yeah. Although some of them I saw were like, okay, I can see what you're going for. But like, that's the thing. I can see it, but it's not quite there.
And I just love that it's actually turned into something where at the end of the day, if you see something that doesn't look good, you can be like, nailed it.
Yep, exactly. It's a thing now. It's a thing now, and it's fantastic. No, I think I really want to encourage Lindsay to get in touch with you because she would have so much fun.
I hope she does. Yes, get in touch.
Our episodes are brought to you by Squadcast, and we're so excited to announce that they are now out of beta and fully released. With each of us living in a different time zone, Squadcast makes it easy for us to record and still make it sound like we're in the same room. Use our code, all caps Talk Nerdy, for 50% off your first month of Squadcast. Check out our affiliate link on our show's page at publichousemedia.org. Well, I think we need to let you go now, but thank you so much again for joining us. We were so happy that we were able to make something work schedule-wise, because it's always interesting with the time zones and everything, even for us three hosts, because we're all in different time zones. So we're just so glad that we could work something out.
No, thank you so much for chatting with me, Emily and Elisabeth. I look forward to listening to more episodes with you guys, and thanks for having me on. This was a real treat.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon.
Awesome. This was so much fun. And we hope you guys really enjoyed this show too. If you have any questions, feel free to contact our social media pages. We'll try to answer any questions we can. And of course, we'll have Shannon's information on deck if you want to get a hold of her. Also, don't forget to check out our store on TeePublic. If you don't have the link, you can always go to publichousemedia.org and click on the store link and it'll take you right there.
I'm Emily.
I'm Elisabeth, and thanks for getting nerdy with us on Beauties and Headcanons.